All right, looks like it's time to start. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let the minutes show that everybody is present except our student member. First order of business, we hear a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I second.
Moved and seconded, the agenda is approved.
Is the green light showing?
Is now. Testing. Okay, I heard that. All right, thank you. Can I hear a motion to approve the minutes of last month?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion is made and seconded, and the minutes pass. At this time, we are going to open up for a public comment. Remind everybody there's 3 minutes for public comment, and a 15-minute time frame total. Is there anybody in attendance today that would like to speak? Hearing none, we'll move on to number 5. This is a question for the board. Did everybody get a chance to go over the information that Ms. Massey gave us? We've got a pretty good understanding of it all.
So, good afternoon, Mikhail Finkel, Executive Services Coordinator. Thank you confirming that you've seen the information. Though I think one thing we need to clarify or have a discussion on with the board is the current makeup of the board as far as the appointments. Prior to this, the board was a 9-member board. We're recommending reducing that to 7 members, which is what the rest of the advisory committees are, that we updated their bylaws this past year. And so we just want to have a quick conversation about the makeup of that. Generally, all the boards, the majority of members for all the boards must be city residents. And then how it's currently written is that we have 4 members that shall reside in the city limits or Navy housing, which is an area that the police department has jurisdiction over. 3 members may reside in the zip code 98277 or 98278. And then the third one is, of that, 2 people shall be members of the business community. So we just want to talk about that and get your feelings on if you think that's sufficient, if it should be changed. With this board, is it better to have appointments organization or community organization, such as a representative of the school district or someone that represents the business community, more like the Chamber of Commerce or Main Street, instead of just going by the zip code, if that makes sense.
Any comments on that? Go ahead.
I like the idea of encouraging the school district having at least a member on the board. I mean, I know we have some representation in that regard, as well as the business community. So we might need to change that wording to include that on, what is it, 5A5? So 2 of the above 7-member board shall be representative of the business community. Do we consider the school a business community, or is it actually a municipality? So at least figuring out how to encourage that involvement, but not limited to, or something. And business community would indicate a business owner of some sort potentially, or are we talking about organizations like you mentioned? So I'd be in favor of like Main Street having potentially somebody here, or the chamber having, as that potential representative of the business community. So just throw it out there.
Chief, can I just ask a question, like, because when we did the zip code, it was to expand some of the other boards to get some of the areas. Is that kind of redundant to like city limits, Navy housing? That zip code does,
So the 98278 zip code really covers the main base. That's the 98278 zip code.
Okay.
98277 does cover up to the bridge for greater Oak Harbor area. It's fine having it on there. I think one thing maybe to consider is if the 7 people, if 4 are within the city limits of Navy housing and 3, maybe it's 3 and 3, and then you allow the 7th person to be a business rep or something else that doesn't have to be confined to one of those 2 things, maybe? I don't know.
or it could be that, the force, yeah. I guess that's the conundrum we were having, is how to, that the 2 of the 7 above, before, 2 of them had to be business members, so it's limiting that they also have to live in those zip codes.
So,
Does that make sense?
yeah, I will say that we do have a lot of businesses that maybe the owners live in Coopville or south Santa Fuca area, that's maybe south of Rolling Hills. And so that is outside the 98277 zip code. However, they are impacted by services that we provide. They pay business taxes. They potentially own the building, those type of things. So they might not be residents. So it could be property, could also change it to property owner or something.
Could we just add the words "or work in"? Live in or work in those zip codes?
And then get rid of the next paragraph down 5, the 2 of the business. So you'd have 4 residents and then 3 that either reside in that zip code or work in our community.
So if you leave it to work in, how do you confirm, I guess, how do we confirm that they work in the area? I guess we're doing business checks or checking who their employer may be.
Isn't there something on the application that
They
asks
do,
about
but we
that?
actually go fact check some of those things on, residents and that type of stuff. So if you say you live in a residence, then we verify that you actually live in that residence. So if you're saying you work at a location, it's not as stable as, I don't know. I guess the stability question is if you're trying to have a position for 2 years, people rotate jobs, those type of things as well.
I feel like in the bylaws in here, it says that if there's, I think it was in the bylaws, that if there's a change, that we have to let somebody know. So if that were an expectation, that if there's a change in where you work, you no longer work in the city of Oak Harbor, you don't live in the city of Oak Harbor, so you don't meet one of those 2 requirements, you're not impacted by what's happening at the city of Oak Harbor Police, then that would be a reason to notify the board or somebody.
For the members of the business community, or however we reword that to do organizations, doesn't matter if they live in the zip code? Like if we got rid of the zip codes and we just had the 4 that are city limits and Navy housing, and then come up with the other 3 shall be, they could be members of the business community, the school system,
I would think-
whatever encompassing organizations we can, and then that way it's also not limited to only just, only someone from the school or only someone from Main Street.
I would think we would want a minimum of 4 residents
Yeah.
that you reside within the city limits. I think that's important. I don't think you want no more than 1 person not living within the zip code. Because if they don't, I like the idea of a minimum of 2 businesses or business organizations or community-based organizations, or something that are involved, which would open the door for, you know, I mean, because some of our nonprofits are considered businesses, I would assume, right? So, we might get potential applicants from the nonprofits that might be vital to have on this community, advisory board. So, I just don't know that we want to open the door for multiple people living in Skagit County, but working here, and then having to, you know, keep up on their work, and, you know, it just seems like more administrative work, extra help on that part, so. I would like to see them all pretty much residing on the north end, myself, so.
Well, I would agree that the majority of our members should definitely come from our zip code. Any thought about maybe getting rid of the word shall and may or is encouraged, other than the four that I think should be from the zip codes for sure, but maybe there's a little more leeway. I don't know if historically, has there ever been trouble getting members because of these rules and restrictions? I don't know. Maybe it's not an issue.
Well, prior, when we did the advisory board rewrite last year, we did expand it because there are people in our community, like you said, North Island and out in Crescent Harbor that are active in our community, but because they weren't in the physical city limits, they couldn't serve. So we expanded that, hoping to attract some of that. So that's the reason why we went by the zip code instead of the physical city limits, because it gives us a little bit bigger of a pool.
So I think leaving the language broad is really beneficial to the purpose of the committee, because the point is to bring in voices from not just the business community, right? I mean, I would argue for maybe not shall, right, but maybe from the business community or local nonprofit organizations or the school district. Yeah, I mean, I think that isn't the whole point to be surveying from a variety of, yeah. So I think maybe eliminate shall and say may, and maybe add some other things. I mean, that would be my vote.
So one suggestion could be that it maybe the A4 and A4 and 5 sort of get wrapped together, and verbiage reading something like this that says 3 members, 3 members may reside within the 98277 zip code, or school district, or business community, or nonprofit serving Oak Harbor.
I think or opens the door.
And if it's serving Oak Harbor, I think that's very defined as well. I mean, that is our area, so.
You could go with that, and instead of including the 2 zip codes, instead of using or a business community or nonprofit or school district, but to include those somehow versus, I still think you need all 7 members to be residents of, those 3 extra would need to be a minimum residents of North Whidbey.
Why would they need to be residents of North Whidbey if they have businesses here? I'm thinking of something like Seaside Salon and Spa. Erin Wiley, I don't think she lives in Oak Harbor, she lives south. So, but she owns a business here. So why would we limit it to North Whidbey if their business is in Oak Harbor and impacted by what our police department does? And I guess I'm just really curious as to why we need to be so specific about business community or a nonprofit or the school district. I just need some clarification on why we need to be so specific.
Oh, it doesn't have to be specific. That's how it was currently written, that 2 members were members of the business community to have them. But if I can just use the chair for example, we're considering him part of the school district, which is a business community, might not necessarily live in the city limits. So if you changed it to require them to live in city limits, then it might knock out some of those business or, you know, because the person might represent that organization but not necessarily live in the city limits. So that's kind of where we have the conflict now, and trying to.
I would agree, maybe we can use myself for an example, and myself and my wife both work in Oak Harbor. Our kids are students in Oak Harbor School District. We're about 500 yards south of the city limits. And so we'd be a perfect example of someone who would not be allowed to serve on the board. So just some food for thought there.
Except that you're still in the same zip code, which is included in our language already.
No.
You're in 98277.
98239,
Really?
yeah. Yeah, about 500 yards across the line there.
We're, okay, is that, I didn't realize we had that many zip codes up in the north end. So that's Coopville. Okay, gotcha. And then, yeah, I get your point then on that, and I would concede to that as well, yeah.
So maybe that number 4 can be 3 members may reside or work within the 98277 or 98278 zip code areas. And then we can just eliminate 5, which is hyper-specific about where board members need to come from.
Okay. That will work.
Is that an action item for us to approve that?
You can go ahead and make a motion. These
Okay.
will be going to the city council, so you can make a motion to
All right.
recommend that be changed to
Yeah,
that.
let's make it official.
Yeah, and then we'll take it to city council for formal adoption.
Would you like to make a motion for your idea, Mrs. Powers?
Do we need to first, though, talk about on page 3, we need to specify there that we're doing the first Monday of the month. Does that need to be specified, or do we leave that as an example and it's only highlighted because it's an example?
Yes. I forgot what we decided last month about your meetings. Are we meeting on Mondays?
We're doing the first Monday of the month at 4:15, but I'm wondering if that needs to specifically be,
Is Wednesday?
no, sorry, Wednesday. Yeah. This is Wednesday, right? Sorry.
It's changed.
Yeah.
It's changed in the bylaws already?
Yep. You might have had the draft that was in last month's packet.
So,
Yeah.
just to clarify, as we go through this, the recommendation from this board will be the bylaws as amended or bylaws as created coming up to count, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the bylaws.
Instead of
and then
doing each
there's a-
thing individually as we can particularly work the whole document and then recommend the document up to council.
The ordinance? Okay. Yeah, so there's the bylaws and then there's also the ordinance, so maybe that's,
Those might be easier to do separately, just,
yeah.
yeah.
But they have the same language as
Gotcha.
far as the appointments.
So is that section 3A the only section that needed to be changed or discussed before we send it?
Yes,
Before we
unless
vote
there were
on it.
any other recommendations from the board for changes. That was the only clarification we wanted.
Okay.
It changed to that.
So then, we need a motion to make that
Yep.
change? Okay.
Please.
So I move that we change the bylaws and rules of procedure, section 3A4, to read 3 members may reside or work within the 98277 or 98278 zip code areas, and we eliminate section 3A5.
I second that.
Call for a vote.
Oh, excuse me. Call for a vote for that motion. All those in favor, raise your hands, signify by saying aye. Aye.
All right, then the second part, which he was referring to, is the ordinance for the board has the same language in section, make it easier, 2.50.030B. And so if you want to change, it would be B2.
I would recommend we just mirror the exact language from the bylaws for that section B, what is it? You're going to combine 2 and 3,
Yes.
just the same way you recommended, so the language consistent.
Yes. So are you good without a motion?
I will make that motion.
I second.
All right, let's put to vote the changing of the ordinance consistent with the aforementioned changes of the bylaws. All those approve, raise right hand. Aye. Motion passes.
All right, and then I think that's all for that item.
Item number 6 is a Oak Harbor Police Department overview by Captain Slowick.
That's all right.
Chief Slowick.
I forgive you.
Yeah,
Do we have
it's a blast from the past.
I love this part. Oh, the clicker's not going to work? Okay. Oh, you know why? It's because you're not in PowerPoint view mode. It drops it over there. It's on your other monitor. Okay. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Chief Slowick, Oak Harbor Police Department. I am here to provide the Community Advisory Board with an overview of the police department. I've also provided the slideshow to you in paper form. So if we end up getting some technical difficulty, you all can follow along and also take it home with you. So the first slide really is staffing, and there's a lot of different colors on here. But to let you know, the police department is currently authorized 29 commissioned full-time officers. We have 3 non-commissioned police support officers, which are corrections staff. They also do some other functions like backup evidence. They do animal control, and they manage, one of them is our supervisor that manages all our incarcerated people that are typically at SCORE or the King County Regional Jail Facility. We have Meg Massey is our executive assistant, which is a non-represented employee there. And we also have our 4 people in our records division, which is a supervisor, an evidence technician, and then 3 record specialists. So back in February, I provided a overview of staffing to the city council, and at that time advised them that I'd be making a recommendation that we be adding 5 additional officers. One of them is a dedicated drug detective, and then 1 part-time receptionist, because we do not have a receptionist at the police department. If you look at this map here, anybody that's coded in red are people those are unfilled positions at this time. However, of those unfilled positions, we have offered conditional offers to all but 3 of the positions. So we are currently trying to get them recruited and brought into the police department. And then anybody that's in blue are the positions that I requested or advised City Council that we be trying to fill as future staffing needs. Is there any questions with the staffing?
What's PSO?
Oh, Police Support Officer. Yeah. And the police support, they are certified corrections officers with the state of Washington. We use them really as, I'll be honest, like a Swiss Army knife. They do a multitude of functions that we don't always have people in our holding facility because Oak Harbor no longer has a jail. And they facilitate court, they facilitate transports to King County where we house people. They facilitate electronic home monitoring, but then do a lot of backup functions within the police department. A lot of times they're doing transports of people that are in custody or detained, and very valuable to us. So they were a great way to use staff that we already had when we did shut down our our jail, our municipal jail, and they've worked out very well for us. So the next slide is really our operations, and we call it our 5+2 model. This is something that was former Chief Dresker. He really coined this phrase, and what it refers to is our 5 fundamental functions of our police department, what we really focus on. So that's schools, parks, downtown, traffic, and our community engagement. All of those things can be broken down into a lot of different activities. However, those really are the core. When we talk about what we focus on, those are our core pieces. And then the 2 portion really is what are our primary duties as a police department, and that's our proactive police work and our response to calls. So our proactive police work could be that discretionary time when officers aren't assigned to something, and then what are they going out and doing, not sitting at the office, right? That engagement that they're out having in the community, so that impact. And we'll get into that proactive police work at the very end. I did include a little bit of a staffing study that I provided to City Council that's in this packet as well. So additionally, I just wanted to provide some data that we have that we've been tracking. This is just going back for the last 5 years, and it's our calls for service. While I would say that they're staying fairly steady, 2022 definitely was a higher year for calls. However, what we're finding is that a lot of the calls for service have a lot of mental health component and require more than one officer and a lot more time on the call. So while it might have been somebody just complaining about a nuisance complaint of somebody sitting on the sidewalk or trespassing or something like that, there's a lot of layers to that contact, and we are very committed to our co-responder with mental health and our connection to care. So those are things that take a lot of time, and we have some resources in this community like ATUA, which is a voluntary treatment facility for drugs and alcohol. We have the ability of trying to get somebody in if there's a bed available that day over to the facility, but that has to be the right time for that person because it's all voluntary. So that's just one example. Or we have opioid outreach. We have, again, the co-responder program, a lot of other services that are offered through Island County Human Services that we have an interlocal agreement for. Next is just an example of some of our community engagement. Coffee with a Cop is something that we really enjoy doing. It does allow us to get meet with different people at different times. Usually it happens during the workday, but we're looking at how we can facilitate that on weekends and evenings to make sure that we can get a different representation of the community. So that's one fun piece we do. We always have National Night Out, which you guys are all invited to. That is the first Tuesday in August. It's going to be August 6th this year. It's at Windjammer Park, and it goes from 4 to 7 o'clock. So it's a 3-hour period. We have Citizens Academy, which is running right now, and that is a program that we offer. It's no cost, but it's a 12-week period program. Actually, Mr. Malloy is currently in it with the mayor and 10 other people in our community. Emma's in it as well. And so it's a great opportunity to see what the police department does, how we serve the community, what the sort of inner workings of the police department is all about, and then you get a lot of engagement opportunities as well. Then we do have a Neighborhood Watch program. Over the last few years, we stopped really supporting that Neighborhood Watch program. However, we are committed to reviving that in our community. At one point, we had a little over 20 Neighborhood Watch groups, and we're reaching out to those block captains and trying to revive those. Additionally, we are meeting with business districts, and we have a few different business district meetings. So Main Street is a perfect example, or the Chamber of Commerce. But one of the unrepresented business districts is we're calling it the Southwest Business District, and that is really Rite Aid. If you take the highway being the east border and you go all the way down to the car wash and over to grocery outlet, the big box store, sort of that triangle. That is one business district that we have been meeting with for the last couple months. The next meeting's next Wednesday. It's at 10 o'clock at the cinema. Anyone is welcome to attend if you're interested. It's a pretty decent turnout. I think we had about 20 businesses represented at the last meeting. And it's an opportunity to discuss some of the concerns that they're having. That is the area where we have Spin Cafe. And so some of those, just to foster that communication and facilitate getting to know each other. That's really what that meeting is about. And I've heard a lot of positive results from just our last meeting. So I'm excited for this next one that we're having. So after this presentation, I'm going to go over a community survey that we're looking at doing, but part of that is because we have a 5-year strategic plan that we write. We're in a writing period for our strategic plan from 2024 through 2029, and our last one just ended. These were the objectives off that last 5-year strategic plan. That 5-year strategic plan from 2019 to 2023 is in your booklet, your 3-ring binder booklet as well. So of those, we met a lot of those objectives. Some of those are reoccurring things. For example, accreditation. We are a Washington State accredited agency. Of the 240 plus police, so municipal police departments or sheriff's offices, there are only about 62 that are accredited in Washington State. We're one of those 62. So that's a pretty good achievement. We are going through a reaccreditation this year. So our reaccreditation will be in the fall. We already have a accreditation manager that's myself, but we have the chief of Anacortes, Chief Floyd, is actually the person that's leading our accreditation. So he's the reviewer that's a local support for us, make sure that we are compliant and everything, and then there's a period of about 3 days where a bunch of executives from other agencies come in and then do an assessment on us. So it's a pretty labor-intensive thing, but it makes sure that we're performing at best practices, make sure that we are providing the adequate training, that we're following laws, and that we are meeting the needs of our community. So it's a pretty impressive thing and something we're proud of. Some of these other things like sustainability of training, those are always an ongoing thing. There's ongoing requirements. There's a lot of unfunded requirements from the state legislatures where they require us for training, but they don't provide funding for it. So you have to figure out how do you meet those laws and make sure that we're compliant with things. And a lot of times it's through regional partnerships. So we are part of a regional partnership with all of the law enforcement agencies in Island and Skagit County and the San Juans. So we partner up and we share resources, and we have a monthly meeting, and which is also next Wednesday. So, but the goal behind all of that is to not one person can do all of the things that is required of us. So it takes a lot of the community model of everybody coming together to make things work. So, and then, I think that, strengthening relationships, those are always pieces that always continue to go. So, any questions about the past strategic plan? No. And we're really excited about the community survey. We're hoping this gets us more information, some insight on what the community is looking for in policing, and we'll talk about that again in a little bit. So the next few slides are really just some metrics that we have. So this is some of our arrests, misdemeanor, felony arrests, traffic, and infractions. So in Washington State, infraction means a ticket. Everything else is called a citation. So a citation means an arrestable thing, like it could be a criminal, traffic for a suspended driving or DUI, reckless driving, that's a citation. An arrest is a citation. So. Additionally, part of the analysis I did for staffing earlier in the year, we really looked at what our top 10 calls and handling times were. And so even though you might have a 911 hang-up call, and that might only take, you would think, oh, it only takes a few minutes because of why? It actually, on the average, took us 31.9 minutes on each one of our 911 calls, because a lot of times those turn into something else. We've had incidents in our greater Whidbey Island community where 911 calls have gone, this is in the past, so not happening in Oak Harbor, but where 911 calls have not been thoroughly investigated and find out that criminal activity was at foot, or there was a domestic violence incident. And so we bring that up with our officers to make sure that they're thoroughly going through and figuring out why did that accidental phone dial happen. And maybe it was the toddler that grabbed the phone, or maybe it was something else and we have to interview and do some more investigation. So, but these are just our calls for service for last year, and then on average it's about 47.2 minutes per incident is really what it works out to. Next slide is really just when is our, this is what we use to look at when do we have proper staffing and when do we need to flex some staffing in to make sure we meet all our call demands and what time of day that might be. And then historically in Oak Harbor, and this has actually been in place as long as I've been here, up until this year, we would go 2 officers. We had a 2-officer minimum, and that was between 3 a.m. and 3 p.m. After that, we would go 3 officers from 3 p.m. to 3 a.m. That was our minimum staffing. But if you go back and look at the previous slide, which you don't have to move it, but you could see our call loads before 3 are pretty heavy. And so it really doesn't make a lot of sense to just have 2 people working and you have a pretty heavy call load for like 6 hours. So that, it's not good for our community, it's not good for our officers responding, and it's not good for officer safety. So when I took over as the chief, we switched our 3-officer minimum to start at 8 a.m. It goes to 3 a.m. There is a few hour window where we can go down, a 5-hour window where we can go down to 2 officers. It is historically when we have less calls. Most of the time we have 3 officers on all the time. And we know that that is just the minimum. We know that a lot of times we need 4 or 5 officers on. So, and then some special service stuff that's going on. One is public disclosure requests. So in the last, we've had a 109% increase in public disclosure requests in over a 2-year period. On average, we are spending 45 to 60 hours a week handling public disclosure requests. And that is only getting worse as we have people who just request different things. So that takes more and more staff time. Our staff that manage those public disclosures requests, either in records or they're all in records, but maybe they're a record specialist or they're the evidence person. We haven't had an increase in staffing in that area, so they have had to learn how to be more efficient, use technology, and a lot of that technology is very expensive. So, but But right now, that's what that takes, and we've notified city council that there's a need there, and we're looking at how we can leverage technology before we add more staff. That's the biggest thing. Additionally, we've had a lot of drug activity in our area, and I'm really committed to getting a body that we can put on the Skagit County Drug Task Force. That is a multi-county drug task force. They actually do and serve our Whidbey Island community. There is no police assistance on that task force currently, so that means Oak Harbor, Langley, or Island County don't provide a person to that task force team. However, we know that there's a lot that the drugs that are going on in Skagit County, often those same players are dealing drugs over here. We know that if Skagit County is doing a lot of enforcement activity, they come over here and hide. So it's important that we have that representation, and that the city council has been very supportive of that, and we're really trying to figure out how can we find that, I will call it semi-permanent funding, which is how can we utilize some of our opioid settlement funds to fill that position. And we believe that, or I believe that we could take some of our recent opioid settlement funds that we're receiving and fund a position for up to 8 years, and which would be a huge impact. It would not have to come out of any other funding stream. That would fund both the overtime, the officer's normal pay and benefits, and that's fully justified within the opioid settlement agreement that we've signed on to with the state. So just a couple drug things that are there. We had a shooting in January that was by the Roller Barn. That's some results that came out of that shooting that we filed charges on. So we've seized $80,000, 2 pounds of cocaine, and a firearm in that incident during that investigation. We've had a lot of hot fentanyl in this community, and we've had drug overdoses in this community. There are opioid death investigations that are being conducted both in Island County and Skagit County. And then the drug task force seized 5 pounds of meth, 4 pounds of fentanyl, $70,000 as part of a DEA operation as well. So I will say that the drug task force, even though we don't have a person on the team, I am getting updated about every 2 weeks by their task force commander to let us know what's going on here and really seeing what they can assist with. So it's pretty awesome to see that teamwork and that cooperation. And that drug task force has FBI representation, Homeland Security representation, DEA representation. We're trying to get somebody from NCIS on that team, so it's pretty well supported. They are also nationally recognized, and they just received the, in 2023, they received the Task Force of the Year from Department of Homeland Security, which is pretty awesome. Any questions?
What is the timeline for getting an officer on that task force?
Yeah, so yesterday was actually a meeting with the board of the task force board, and they voted to allow Oak Harbor to put a person on the team. So that requires an interlocal agreement to get re-signed amongst all of the agencies and it's like 7 different jurisdictions that have to re-sign this interlocal agreement along with us. So it's got to go through some lawyers. And then it's got to go to city council. And if everybody signs on to it, then, and we have the ability and the staffing and the funding, then we can move forward. So I think the earliest it could be September, realistically. I think the question is, can we find a funding model that city council supports to do that? And again, they are very supportive of that conversation. Yeah.
Chief Slowick, could you, I feel that I'm ignorant here.
No.
So you want to use some of the opioid settlement funds to fund a position for 8 years. How does that, how do you go about getting approval for that? Is that something that city council is currently working on?
Yeah, so city council last year, it was about September of last year, they created a process for approving opioid settlement funds. We've actually used the process twice now, most recently at the last city council meeting where we approved a purchase for up to $5,500 for naloxone, which is the drug that can counter opioid overdoses. And so that process is sort of twofold. The first one part is either somebody within the city or somebody in the community can come to the city and say, we want to expend opioid settlement funds, we've got this great idea. So that goes to a workshop and is presented, or a city council meeting, one of the two, and is presented to city council as what the idea is and allows for city council to provide feedback and you hear if there's support for it or not. It also allows for the public to comment on the use of the opioid settlement funds. If everything sounds like it's good, we then bring it back to another city council meeting, and it's advertised in the agenda, brought back to the city council meeting for approval. So it's presented back to the city council. They then make a motion to approve the funds and allows for the public also to comment at that time to give an opinion. So it's a fairly easy process. So I think it works well. We used it with the ARPA funds as well, so I think it works. And then we put it on our website. And I will also add, all of the opioid funds, there is a regional group that that oversees how we're spending the funds. And so I'm the representative for the city of Oak Harbor on that group. And so then we report that through our grant coordinator to the state or that group.
So that's already been started, the workshop has that starts it all off, the question.
Yeah, so right now, we are waiting for $1.2 million to be received through a Johnson & Johnson settlement fund. City Council authorized the mayor to sign on to that agreement, which has already happened. We've submitted all the paperwork. We're waiting for that money to show up in our bank account. Once that money shows up, we let City Council know, and then we can make a request to expend the funds for that position. The nice thing is that even though the city council today authorizes the use of the funds and say it's long-term dispersing of funds, a different city council next year can change course and say, you know, we don't really want to use it that way, and they're not tied into having to spend it that way. So there is some flexibility and gives all the control to city council. Yep. All right, so really the last few slides here are just the staffing analysis that I did in February, and what this goes over is a few things just to give some overview and how we look at how we staff our department and why we staff a certain way. So really, there are two staffing models that you can look at. One is a per capita staffing model, which probably most people have heard of, where you go and say it's one officer per 1,000 people, and then you just do the quick math and you figure out you need so many people in your community. The other staffing model that we look at is a performance model or a proactive time model. And that is where you look and say, okay, how much time has officers actually spent on calls for service or the training or the dedicated time that they have to do their job. And then we know of that, we want to keep about 40% of the remainder of their shift available so they can go out and have engagement in the community. And so that's the proactive time model. So what I've provided you here is the data for that we captured. So first one is the overview of the per capita model. Really gives the advantages of really being a simple way to calculate, ease of interpretation. The disadvantages, it doesn't always show how the officers spend their time. So if you don't have a lot of calls for service or you don't have a lot of time spent on investigating calls, you could have a lot of officers just sitting on their thumbs not doing a lot of things. And that's maybe not the best way to for the taxpayer money to be spent, right? Or use city revenues. So the other part, it doesn't make ensure that we have the quality of work, so we're not working efficiently. And it also doesn't always account for the engagement that the community needs. So if we were to examine, the next page, yeah. So if we were to look at just a per capita staffing model, this is actually where Oak Harbor sits with our comparable cities. Currently, we are 29 commissioned officers authorized, which puts us at a 1.17 per capita, which is pretty low. If you look at state average, it's about a 1.4. The mean for our comparable cities is a 1.6, or I'm sorry, the average is a 1.63, and the national average is, actually just went down. It used to be 2.4, it went down to 2.31. So there are some jurisdictions that have, like Burlington, you're like, man, they've got 30 officers, but they also have an influx in their city. Daytime population goes up to about 60,000, nighttime population goes to 9,816. So they bring a lot more officers on during the daytime because of that fluctuation. And when the mall and all of that other stuff was really going, it was a lot more. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Now, I would love to say that's the model we use because the math is simple and I can explain it really easy, but I don't think that's the right way to do that. So I think really we look at the proactive model, and this is what is recommended, best practices by the Department of Justice, International Association of Chiefs of Police, WASPIC, which is our Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. And really this looks at the report writing, evidence processing, follow-up investigations, shift briefing, meal breaks, collective bargaining agreement requirements, as in like how much time you're allowed to work or time off, whatever those might be, court time training. It looks like at all of these things and figures out how much time is an officer spending and then how much time is available. And from that you go and you figure out what time you need or how many people you need. So from that, we went and did an in-depth analysis of our time. And then you look at our total number of hours, and we were able to come up and say our officers have a average proactive time or availability time of 24.6. So we really want to get to about 40%. So it's currently at 24%. And so to do that, that's where we made the recommendation of adding some more staff and where we feel the staff is needed. We feel like we can flex staff on different times or different shifts to make sure that we have the adequate staffing, not just the minimum staffing, but the fluctuation of staffing needed that we, on those busier times, and also provides for some dedicated positioning for like traffic or co-responder or, those type of things, so. So currently, because we are low in the 40% or the staffing, and really just some staffing levels anyways, we are leveraging, myself on call response. Our SR school resource officer gets pulled from the school to help for some call response. Some of our proactive team, they get pulled to do shift work all the time. Detectives, they get pulled. So we pull those other specialty assignments just to do our basic patrol function when we're either inundated with calls or staffing levels are pretty low. So, and then the last part there really talks about some of those unfunded mandates for training, and those are de-escalation training, use of force training, bias training, EVOC training, active shooter training. Those, and while I'm saying they're unfunded, we are mandated to do these trainings, and there's no funding coming in, or a lot of times there's no training development coming in on saying this is how you do the training from the state level, which a lot of times for us is the criminal justice training commissions are the group that often makes the training requirements or training curriculum. So that information is very vague, and then we have to figure out how do we provide this 2, 4, 6 hours of training. When you talk about EVOC time, because that is to be able to do a lot of our police functions, you have to have emergency vehicle operator course. That's what EVOC stands for. Sorry for the acronyms. I appreciate all the looks of the glazed over look. No. But for us to do that means we have to go out of county. We don't have the availability to do any emergency vehicle operator course. Yeah. So EVOC. So it's driving our patrol cars quickly in different maneuvers. We have the trained staff, we have the instructors, we have the vehicles, but we don't have the area. So we have to go to Skagit County, and currently it's the Skagit Airport. However, the Skagit Airport notified all the law enforcement last year that they're getting more corporate use of their airport, and they're not going to allow us to use certain runways. So through our legislators, we're able to tie some grant funding to use of the airport for a period of time so we can look at other resources, but the next available resources like Arlington. So for us to send all our officers to Arlington is a very challenging thing for, a 4 or 6 hour training. That's just one example. The other part is, range space. There are only 3 ranges on the island, like shooting ranges. And of those shooting ranges, the one that's within our jurisdiction is, there's two in our jurisdiction. One's an indoor range that is closed now, and the building's for sale. The other one is the range that we often use, which is an outdoor range, and they limit our use of the range because they have paying customers, and we pay for a membership, but they limit how we use that range and the types of tactics we can do on the range and those things because, it's just liability, it's different reasons. So then if we if we lose that range, it's then Coupeville or South OLF is one, or it's going off island is where we'd have to look at for training. And then this is just an overview of, again, what the ask was from City Council, which will be revisited as we tie in, to make the ask, you have to tie in how do you get the permanent funding for that ask. And that's the biggest thing. You can't just say, hey, I need this shiny thing, but I can't fund it. Then City Council can't fund it either. So it's really working through all the departments in the city, figuring out what's the recommendation that we can give options to City Council. And we're working through that now. Part of that is grants. There are, Department of Justice does COPS grants for staffing for commissioned police officers, but they only fill about 25% of the cost of an officer for 3 years, and you have to pay the other 75% and then have the officer employed the 4th year, or you're ineligible for any of those grants anymore. So there's a lot of conditions that go with that. So really, it's nice to get some reimbursement, but that's really just a reimbursement grant versus it being a fully funded position. So, is there any questions?
I have one, just out of curiosity.
Yes, sir.
Thanks again for presenting all this to us. Always good to get it. I'm kind of stuck on the EVOC training, right? Like, knowing we don't have large, open, asphalted or concrete surfaces, have we ever approached the Navy?
We have.
Because Seaplane Base has that great big parking lot at one point where the carnival used to go.
Yeah. So we've used we've used where on the Seaplane Base 2 years where there is a where they had the Navy Lodge. So when you go through Navigate, it's just to the right, and it's sort of the patchy concrete pads and all of that. We've used that area twice. It's great for slow speed, 35 miles or less. It does not meet the pursuit requirement that we have to do. So we're not able to do any of the high speed pursuit things to meet the legislature's requirement of saying that's been signed off. The other area we've used is OLF. However, the Navy has been unable to commit to giving us that for about a 10-year period. So about the last time we used it was 10 years ago. We've only used it twice in my 20-year career at that location. So the more reliable one is the Skagit Airport, but we'll get it this year again. We'll just see how this goes. I know that there is plans or discussion with the sheriff in Skagit County and his commissioners about buying some property and them trying to get some funding to build something, but that could be a 10-year project. So
is there anything, and I know it's not on this board, but is there anything we as council or the mayor can do to help facilitate OLF for the future with the new chain of command coming?
No, the command is very supportive of law enforcement, and we have a great partnership. They often what bumps us from being able to secure the range is the fact that there's conflict going on any place in the world, and they have to have aircraft that is doing touch and go. For us to get the field, we need to shut it down for about 7 days, or about 2/3 of it to shut it down. And so typically the only time we get that is when they need to resurface. And if we know they have to resurface, we'll get it for a week, because they have to resurface a patch and they can't fly. But that doesn't happen that often. Yeah. All right, any other questions?
Just to clarify, you said the Northwest Business Meeting is at the cinema on Sunday at 10?
It is, and if after this, I'm happy to give you, but it's at the cinema at 10, on the 8th,
Okay, just checking.
whatever
That's a Wednesday.
what did I say? What day did I say?
She was asking if it,
I thought it was said Sunday, so.
No,
Yeah, it's
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah. Sure.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll send it, Meg has the flyer that Emma, our intern, so this is Emma Edwards, our intern. She's done a great job putting together these books, along with Meg. Has been excellent support at the police department. She's currently getting her criminal justice degree at Eastern Washington University. Wants to be a police officer when she grows up. We're really hoping that she becomes a police officer with us. She's very wonderful, and we're excited to have her, so. But Emma made the flyers for the business district meeting, and so we'll make sure we get that to you.
Thank you for your presentation, Chief. That was really good. I learned a lot, actually. And
All right.
thank you, Emma, for all your work in the background, getting this stuff arranged and making our meetings more productive. Chief, I have a real quick question.
Yes, sir.
If we get the 5 new officer positions, what would our per capita staff number be?
I think it takes us to like 1.3.
Okay, so we'd still be below
Yeah.
the average?
I think it's like 1.35, I believe, is when I did the math,
Okay.
something like that.
All right, thanks.
But I will be honest, talking to city council, I think if we get those numbers, I think that's us holding that staffing for like 7 years. I think that'll actually help us for about a 7-year period. The question will really be, what does Navy do with their housing? Currently, we have a interlocal agreement with the Navy that we provide the domestic violence response for in-progress crimes. We then support as an assist agency for other assistance on investigations. A lot of times, those are domestic violence investigations. There's been some ruling in federal court where co-jurisdiction areas like our Navy housing that are outside the fence line, so anything that's east of Regatta, anything out on Crescent Harbor, that while that is NCIS's area for criminal investigations, the federal court has said they want those to go through state court, because everyone has a court docket that's very full, and they don't always have the funding or the staffing, so they're trying to push those through state courts, and NCIS agents are not deputized by the jurisdiction. So that means the local jurisdictions need to do those investigations, or at least receive the investigations and then comb over the investigation to make sure they're thorough, do the follow-up, and then submit them as our own case. So we'll see how that goes over and what that looks like. There could be, and I know in the last legislative session, there was an ask, and I believe it was Ron Muzal who proposed the ability to charge or tax the privatized housing companies that manage those houses. So what has happened is the Navy has said, hey, we have all this is federal property, we have all these houses or residences or units, and of that, we're collecting everyone's basic housing allowance if you're a active duty member, or you could be a retiree and live in housing, or you could be a veteran and live in housing. So you don't actually have to be active duty. And all of that money coming in doesn't come back into the local jurisdiction for any tax revenue because it's federal property. But because it's now privatized and managed privately, there are areas in like California, they have passed taxes where they look at the per unit allocation, and then they get a fee. The local jurisdiction gets a fee. So that is one way of looking, can we get some revenue that way? And the mayor and our city administrator are all looking into that, talking with our elected officials, and I know the city council's asked about that multiple times, so that is one thing that we're looking. But for what I look at is the prosecution side and the case investigation. We might just be required that we have to start taking those investigations over, and then having this extra staff really will be necessary at that point. So, yep.
Chief Slowick, can you expand on the total calls for service? Your opinion as to why it dropped in 2023 compared to 22?
You know, so I'm just looking at what so it's about a 400 call difference. You know, I think they always fluctuate a little bit. I can say that our numbers in 2022 were excessively high. And some of that reason it might drop down is we have started text to 911. We are doing a lot more outreach. I think during COVID, the fact that we weren't interacting a lot with people drove up our calls for service as well. So I think that's what that's really what I would attribute a lot of that to. Yep. Okay, next, are we good to move to the survey? Yeah, okay. So the next thing is I provided the Department of Justice Community-Oriented Policing survey that the department is actually recommending using as the baseline for a community survey. And why would we even want to do this? Because sometimes, you know, you throw a survey out, you really want the answers, all of those type of things. We haven't done a community survey ever that I know of. I know we haven't done one in the last 20 years. And I think that we're at this point where it's very important for us to understand, are we providing the service to the community on the way they want to be policed? And the only way we could do that is really push out some questions and ask these questions and then get some response to see what that looks like and then adjust and pivot how we need to do that. I know that while I hear a lot of great things, I hear some negative things sometimes. I know City Council hears some negative things, and we try to respond and react to those. But I think that there's probably a lot of unrepresented people that often don't contact law enforcement or don't contact City Council, and we just want to provide them a tool to be able to communicate back with us. So, with this community survey, it would not go out as a federal DOJ survey. We would reword all of this to make it presentation-wise, it'll be city survey. But the questions, my recommendation would be the questions would be the same thing. The survey is very relevant. It's been around for about 10 years, but I believe that it's very relevant in some of the questions that it asks. Talking with my colleagues in law enforcement in the state and nationally, they're using this survey all the time, and then they add in some questions, which I did at the very end. To this, there is a page where there are some open-ended questions because the survey is a lot of choose your own adventure. But we want to ask just some basic things of, what does it look like to be safe in the community, which I'll be honest, it was great talking with Emma and getting her perspective and on that as well. So, some procedural justice questions, and just allow that to be open-ended to see how are we getting that information. I don't think that we have to go through this today, but I would like maybe at our next meeting to talk about if you guys have any questions or input. I am interested in this group. If there are questions that we would like to ask, this is where I would like that to come from this group and us discuss, and if we want to add something to that. I will be taking this to City Council and letting them know that the plan is to put the survey out before it goes out so that I have their endorsement for that. I don't want to push something out that's not, that the City Council doesn't sponsor or support, so. Okay, yeah, questions? Yes, sir.
All boxes checked, this gets approved. When are you wanting to launch the survey?
So I think that I would probably present this at the June City Council meeting, or workshop, June City Council workshop, because I believe our council meeting and our is the day before our CAB meeting. I think that just because the city council meeting's first. So I think that the workshop is where I would take it to city council in June.
In June.
Yeah.
Okay, and my other thought, it all gets approved, right? Would it need, it'll need council approval, which wouldn't come till the first week of July, first Tuesday in July, right?
I don't know if that, I think I'll
Would it
have to
be-
ask staff.
I was just thinking if you wanted to push this out and get engaging with the community, 4th of July week end wouldn't be a bad approach with the carnival and
Yeah.
community members coming down.
I think
right?
we'd be
So-
prepared at that workshop if council approved it. We'd ask for
So
a
maybe
motion
making for-
to support it. If they approve it, we'd be pushing it out right away. I'll say a couple of the ways we'd be pushing out besides social media, QR codes, those type of things. Everyone in the city receives a utility bill from the city. We'd be adding it to the utility bill. We'd be looking at trying to get the greatest, the ability to get as much input as possible. Additionally, on there, we added the ability to communicate with CAB. If they want to do that, that would then take them into like a separate email that they can enter their information separate of the survey. So the survey is anonymous unless they wanted to provide their information, but then they can communicate with CAB as well. So we felt like that was a way to get that information out there. Okay. Yeah. So this will be on the agenda for our next meeting to have that discussion, so.
For this survey, is it going to be just city, people who live within the city that can use it, or?
It is, yeah, it's anybody in our community.
Okay.
I do have a piece where I'm asking some demographics of where do you live roughly? So our city's in a quadrant system, which probably most of us don't know. And when I tell you the quadrant, you're gonna be like, that's really weird, but it's Oak Harbor Road and Whidbey Road. So it's not the highway in Whidbey. It's one block up behind SARS at Oak Harbor, and Whidbey is actually the center point of the city. And then you're either in the northwest quadrant, the northeast quadrant. So we're in a quadrant section. So I'm asking you which quadrant you're in. And then the other options you have are you live outside the city, or you live outside the city and you're a business owner. So, and we can change that business owner to something else. The business owner part was really trying to really engage with that business community that we actually have a good relationship with, and there's a lot of representation, so.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. Am I doing the next one? Yeah. So I will start. No? I think the next one really is us just wanting to find out how do you want people's ways to communicate with the community. What are ways that we can support that? I mean, do you guys want business cards? Do you want, how would you like us to help you so that the community knows that they can communicate with you? And if there's any ideas, I think this is probably an ongoing topic that we'll just keep on having. But if there are any ideas out there, we want to make sure that we can support that. And, again, if it's business cards or something, we'll get those made and get those handed out. Or if it's an email address or whatever that would be.
Personally, anything that I can give in person is always good. I'm also an ambassador for the Chamber of Commerce, so anytime I go out and I do things, I always wear my ambassador badge, just because it also helps people identify as I'm a good point of contact, so maybe getting name badges that we can wear out if we're out and about doing things.
Okay. T-shirts. I've got some made.
Heck
I'm
yeah.
getting some made. I got some T-shirts.
I'm also a small business owner that runs 6 days a week, so I totally can wear that stuff while I'm with my gift store, so absolutely.
Sure.
What ways were communicated the last time when the CAB was active?
Meg, that's on you. So polos, business cards, and email address, which was was it a general email? Yeah, so it was one email address that would come in, so we had the the public disclosure tracking of it, and then that information would get pushed out to you guys on how you preferred to receive that.
I love that idea of cards, being able to hand out cards. Got an issue, you hear somebody talk about something and you can hand them a card. That's great.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Oh,
Is the email access through like the city's website? I mean, where's the front of that?
So on the city's website, on the police website and the Community
Okay.
Advisory Board page, it does have an email address that's on there for it's cab@oakharbor.org.
Very well, thank you.
So it's tracked through the city.
Yeah, the biggest thing is public disclosure, and we're wanting to make sure that we're tracking that. So nobody needs a pager,
right.
pigeon.
My
Stick
next
with these.
question would be, I know we're now in new age and younger folks don't necessarily do the email per se. They're more like, as we were talking, Snapchat and all that. So is there a way we could do like a social media, like where they could contact, maybe do a Facebook page where it's advertised that, hey, they could email or IM, I guess, there instead of...
Definitely, we have, both the city has a Facebook page and the police department. We can put stuff out on social media. I know that the police department's getting an Instagram account and a few other, I don't think we're getting a Snapchat account, but, we can put out information that this is ways to communicate, and we're happy to do that, so.
Perfect.
Yeah. And if it's I know one of the things that actually came up today was possibly even just to be able to text to something,
Yeah.
So, or even a QR code, so.
I would love to see us reaching out to Would-Be News Times and Would-Be Weekly, just to do an article about all of the community boards and the Arts Commission and all the, I think that there's a huge majority of our population that doesn't realize that there are ways to be active
And get involved.
and get involved with city government. I think that'd be great.
Okay, we heard that. We will, it's a perfect thing for Mikhail.
This is like, I love community engagement in any way, shape, or form. And swag to give away at, any event that's going on in our community should have, really the Community Advisory Board could have a presence. And I know that requires a little bit of extra volunteer time from all of us as well. But just to have a booth in maybe conjunction with some of the other departments and advisory boards, and being able to get, people love swag. So here's our email on some swag, Pins are great, but squish balls and Frisbees are even better.
Stickers.
Oh,
Who doesn't love stickers?
Yeah, I think the National Night Out.
everybody
is gonna be
wants
a-
those stickers,
Be a
right?
great
So
opportunity. It's usually
I think I
very
have
well
one right
attended.
here. You mean this sticker?
No, yeah. We got to work on something new. I don't know.
Right, just,
Yeah.
I don't know, that's one of the things I've noticed throughout the years I've been back that I haven't seen a lot of is the city's involvement, and this would include the advisory boards and the commissions, being involved in Holland happenings, being involved in the 4th of July, National Night Out, Music Fest, right? We have a presence, but being able to let the community know, hey, we're right here, come in, I think that'd be great.
Okay, wonderful.
Well, that might also be a good way to measure responses to the survey, if the survey goes out, right? If we've
Definitely.
volunteered and.
Yep. Okay. All right, thank you.
I would volunteer to sit at a booth for half a day or so.
I totally would too, just saying.
Okay. All right, thank you, guys.
All right, thank you very much, Chief. This time, it looks like we're at item number 9. Open it up for any comments from anybody.
I just have a question, and maybe I missed it, but I have the resolution 2411 that I made a note on that we were supposed to talk about this today. Did I miss that we talked about this? It's the cover for the bylaws. Okay, thanks, Kim.
I do have one comment. I just am like super excited to see this getting started again and having everybody here present to spend a little bit of time in the evenings and participating. And I just am excited to see where this goes and what all we can do to support the police department as well as Oak Harbor. So, excellent. I'm so glad to see the volunteers.
When is Marty going to be up here?
We have a seat for you up here.
That was one thing we were checking on because part of the bylaws, if we put it to council right now, we would have a majority of non-residents than residents. So right now, we've got 2 residents, 2 non-residents. So because of the way the bylaws were written now, we just had to get that figured out, and then we can put his application forward to city council.
So really, it just takes council's approval of the recommended advisory coming out of today's meeting. And then that same meeting, he could essentially be appointed by the mayor.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll
So it could
it'll
be
be
as
on the
early as
consent agenda.
Tuesday. If it's in front of us on Tuesday, will it make it in front of us on Tuesday?
No, those
So
agenda
it'll-
items were due last week, so it would
So
be
it'll be
the
the end of
following
May.
meeting. We can put
At the
it forward.
earliest, okay.
But it'll be.
But we are keeping him updated.
It'll be
Correct.
before the next meeting.
Yes, yes.
Before our next. It'll be the city council before the next council meeting.
Right, so the fourth Tuesday.
If there are no more comments, it looks we'll go to number 10, and we need to talk about future agenda items. Any ideas?
So I know that we're going to have the survey on the future agenda item is the next big one. And then also we'll probably give a brief on National Night Out because that'll be in August. And then I guess I'm opening it up to what information would you guys like to see?
I am really interested in learning a little bit more about cooperation between the police department and mental health professionals, since that's what you're receiving so many calls, right, about. Isn't that at the early part of the meeting that you sort of emphasized that a lot of what you're hearing, a lot of what you're responding to are mental health crises. So I'd like to get more information about that
Certainly.
in the future.
Okay.
And kind of cooperation between.
Certainly. Would you like an overview on the available services in our community and then what our co-responder, which is our mental health police partnership with behavioral health is?
Yeah, I'd really
Does that
like to
sound
know
good?
more about, like, does the police department have community health workers embedded with them or
Sure.
social workers embedded with them, and what are those numbers? And it seems like that maybe there's some targeted.
Yep.
Yep. That's it.
Understood.
Okay. Thank
Definitely.
you.
Also, I don't know how to word this properly, but is there training in process for our officers for like additional training for mental health if they get those in-person relations where that this person's on the edge and needs something right then and there? Just a question, sorry.
Yes, definitely. So each of our officers, so state requires that there's a 2-hour crisis intervention training that all officers have every year. We go above that, and one is we put them through a 3-day patrol tactics class where it's really a de-escalation and how do you de-escalate in different situations. So it could be anything from a show up with a person on the side of the street that's just having a mental health crisis, or it could be something with weapons and firearms and hostage type of people are involved. So it's very wide spectrum, but it gives officers the training there. We also have a virtual reality system where we can put our officers into our VR system and provide them training on different scenarios. I will offer that to you guys as well. If we would like to set that up outside of the CAB meeting, we can arrange for that. It's a great opportunity to see how the different scenarios we can create. And the nice thing is it's one other officer that's running the computer and maybe a safety person that's there. So it's it's not labor intensive to get that going. And in the event there's a real life critical incident, that officer needs to go respond out in the field, they can drop all their gear and take off, and they're fully capable of going versus being, at some very labor intensive training that we would have to put on with multiple people at a different location, that type of thing. We also have an 8-hour CAT class that we run officers through, and then a 40-hour class that's the goal is everybody by 2027 actually has to have the 40-hour class. So a lot of our officers, all of our officers have had the 3-day patrol tactics class. All of them have had the 2-hour class. Most of them have had the 8-hour class and the 40-hour class. And then I will just add that since October, we've actually turned over a third of our department in the officer side, and that's due to retirements, people getting out of policing. Of those 9 people, 2 of them went to other agencies. Everybody else either got out of law enforcement or retired. So, and those other agencies are somebody who was living upper Cedar Woolley, so past Cedar Woolley in the upper Skagit River, and was commuting here for the last 2 years. It got a job with Skagit County Sheriff's Office where he can start and end his shift at his driveway. So that's a big change. The other one was a lateral that came from the Port of Seattle during COVID. He was able to go back there after they reduced their COVID restrictions for employment, and he is a dedicated SWAT officer. So we can't offer somebody that dedicated position. Everybody here is a patrol officer, and then they do specialty jobs, but that's a very specialty thing that when you get that offer, you sort of take it up, and it's a good thing for him. So
Perfect, thank you.
I think maybe sometime in the future, we'd like to learn a little bit more about the school resource officer program. Maybe Officer Adamson can give us a little briefing or something on that.
When is the next, you said right now there's a Citizen Academy that's going on. When is the next one? And did you say 12 people are in that each time?
So there's currently 12 people. We do up to 20. Part of the survey that we are going to ask, not only about engaging with CAB, is the Citizen Academy. And if we get enough response after this survey that we think that we can fill at least 12 seats, we'll do another one in the fall. Otherwise, it would be next year. So, yeah. I'm hoping we can do one in the fall, but we'll see. It all just depends on the participation.
Can we require, if you're part of the board, maybe the members or the board members on this board have to partake in that?
You don't have to. It's highly recommended. I think it's a great opportunity. Even with City Council, we've talked with City Council about that. It's a great opportunity to really understand some things that go on, the training aspect, the engagement aspect, and it's not just the police officer, the commissioned police officers. It's all of our staff and what they go through, and I think it's a great understanding of that. So, highly recommended. And as we get some more information on the survey, I think there's a good opportunity to do one in the fall.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
All right, any more questions or any ideas for agenda items? If there are none, and there's no other issues, I'd like to adjourn the meeting. 17:43. Meeting's adjourned.